take us in your pocket for your Android or mobile device. So, man, I'm looking forward to this one, dog. I'm looking forward to this one. If you have seen the movie Friday, but a lot of people seen the movie Friday. It's a cult classic. There's that part where I forget the character's name, but I know him as DJ Pooh because I'm a hip hop guy. So DJ Pooh is he's trying to get Debo. He goes up to Debo and he says, "Hey Debo, you know that bike, man. I know that bike. I need it back." Oh yeah, that's cool, partner. Well, it's it's not. I wouldn't be tripping. It's just
Pops is tripping, man.
Pops is tripping. It's like both of ours. So, oh yeah, homie, come on over here. And he clocks him one, and he falls on his back, and then he starts running to the car with his arms flailing. And then Craig says, "No, Chris Day says." He says, "You're gonna cry when you get in the car." Let's talk about crying in sports. So the USC Caleb Williams has been on what was maybe not anymore collision course to be the number one pick in this upcoming draft if he decides to make himself available, if he decides to come out into the draft. He plays for USC. So last season he had a Heisman. He won the Heisman Trophy. Was the front runner. I don't think he's a front runner anymore. Was the front runner to go back to back. And they've had an up and down season, kind of. When I say up and down, USC going into their game against Washington was 7-2. And when I say up and down, their defense is definitely the weak link. And there's been some issues with the way in which Caleb Williams has handled some of the challenges, the adversity. When I say adversity, you're 7-2. Going into that game, there's only so much adversity. There's a press conference that he along with other members of the team didn't make themselves available for. At the end of the game, he sat there sulking, just sitting on the bench, just looking as if to say, my partner Ed would say, as if he was just, I did all I could do, but I can't believe this. They lose the game. Washington. They come into this game. Washington was ranked number 7, I believe, and USC was ranked number 20. Yeah, Washington was ranked number 5. USC was ranked number 20. USC loses 52-42. He proceeds after the game to go to the stands, go up in the stands. His mom was at the game because the game was in LA, and proceeds to start crying and bawling. And he has caught a lot of heat. And I'm saying, if you're supposed to be my number one pick, there's certain things that I need from my number one pick besides the arm strength and all the the arm talent and all this other stuff, the ability to lead. I just want to hear from you, man. What did you tell me about your thoughts on this situation?
A lot of red flags go up for me, man. Here's the thing. I would rather have him kicking and throwing chairs and some type of aggression in place of going to seek out mommy and then crying in her arms, her holding a piece of paper over his face so people can't see, but he's literally sobbing. He's doing we've all seen the kids when they start to cry, that type thing.
Yes.
He's literally sobbing in uniform with mommy holding him after a tough loss. And I know we live in a society, man, where we can't, we always have to be politically correct. We can't call people out on certain things nowadays. And, we have to, everybody should be able to show their emotions and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
In sports, in my opinion, I've been in the locker rooms. There's crying. Let's make this, I cried on the sideline when we lost the Super Bowl.
Okay.
But I cried in terms of, it was accomplishment. We got there. We just couldn't pull it off. It was a sad occasion. I actually went down away from some of my teammates, not realizing that other guys on the sideline were doing the same thing as myself. But, I don't know whether it's just a machoism or whatever, but I went away from the side, down the stretch. I'm sitting there wiping tears when I realized, you look across, you see John Elway being put up on shoulders, and it's like over. And it was, I in no way, no how would I have gone looking for my mother or even a significant other to cry in their arms. Like, oh, it's just a bad look. It really is. And you mentioned yesterday when we were talking about it real quick, like if you're a GM or, team that might eventually be drafting him, you have to question this a little bit in terms of, is he emotionally stable enough to take on what he's going to eventually take on? Because you mentioned it, he's going to go to a team that's not going to be very good.
Yeah.
We see what the Bears are right now and a couple other spots where he might land, Arizona for all we know. And it's going to get a whole lot rougher before it gets any better. I mean, are we going to have to be on – and stuff like this follows you too, Jay.
Yeah.
It's a brutal league in terms of the memes that are out there, and guys will use this as fuel out on the field.
They'll poke you. They'll try to get inside your head for sure. Now, one of the things, so it's interesting. You mentioned, and what the question I posed on the run sheet was: is it passion, or is it a weak mental approach? However you want to just describe it, because I'll be straight up. I mean, this is one of the things that I know we've talked about in other iterations, but how when my dad was going through what he was going through, I remember going to your house and I was sitting there and I was talking to you, and I was just I was trying to be cool about it. And so we got up and you said, "All right, Jay," we did the little bro hug, and I just broke down and I started crying, right? But I'm not on the field, and I'm in the after that what goes through your mind when you're after the battle is over, after the game battle. So I'm not trying to say it's like military, but after the game is done. And if I'm going to cry, I'm going to cry with my teammates. And I'm not going to be blubbering, because I think there's only so much that you can do. The game is done. Have the emotion. You wish you won. You see the teammates that might cry if they miss a field goal or some of those things. You see the tears falling down their face, but I don't see the shoulder reactions. I don't see that type of stuff going on. And that does it. The only reason I say it raises a red flag is because if he can't handle that, and you're 7-3 now, and you had 3 losses, and yeah, you did all that you could, man, you wonder if I mentioned to you when I stopped by your house yesterday, is it almost like one of those Ryan Leaf situations? If you knew, let's say a year after he was drafted, what you knew, would you have drafted him still at number 2? Probably not, because he couldn't handle the pressure and the scrutiny that was put upon him at that time in his life. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes, because if you go to a team when you're drafted number 1, number 2, number 3, you're going to a team that's typically bad. You might be the rare guy that comes in like a Stroud coming into what we thought was going to be a bad Texans team that has performed better than we thought. But for the most part, you're going to go through your bumps. You're going to go through take your lumps. That is concerning.
Well, the problem is you ask the question, like, is it passion? Or is it's on the sign of for fragile nature? The problem is, Jay, it's all left up for interpretation by those who are making judgments on you.
Yeah,
some GMs will look at it and say, that young man really cares about what he's doing.
Well, hold on, I'm gonna let you finish. Do you think that those GMs that do that are trying to convince themselves? They say, "Well, no, that's passion. He really cares. That's why we go and take him."
The other thing he's also set himself up for, we all know the combine is going to come next year. Mm-hmm. He'll be one of those quarterbacks. He's above throwing at the combine, but he'll come for the interviews, right?
Yeah.
What do you think some of the first questions those GMs and people making the decision are going to ask? So, Caleb, what was up with the crying on the sideline? What was that all about? Now you have to explain yourself and, come up with your best answer, but they're going to now decipher that answer. So, I mean, it's all up to interpretation. The other thing is, Jay, we've seen guys put in the, NCAA tournament, March Madness, even football games, whatever. You put the towel over your head and you shed a couple tears. There's no shame in that. Where I find the egregiousness, you went, and like I said, and this is why I'm talking about you set yourself up. You go looking for your mother. And like I said, I was joking with my son on the way to school this morning. I told him, because he's like, "Take it easy, okay." I was like, we ever get to a point where we're sitting in the stands, you come looking for your mother, I'm taking her out of there. We're not having that type of situation. Because like I said, you're opening yourself up, and it's just not it's not a good look. You don't have to go find, I dare say go find your dad, give him a hug, and maybe you two shed a tear together, but not crying in mommy's arms and she's shielding your face. That to me is, like I said, it's just a bad look, and it's it's all up to interpretation. The problem is now everybody's going to start dissecting it. He could have took himself, composed himself, went into the locker room, and obviously last week they weren't even allowed to talk to the press. You sit in your front of your locker, you get that stuff out of there. Okay, we're done with it, right?
Riley is doing his players a disservice. He's doing his players a disservice, man, by doing these things. Or we're not talking to the press. We're not doing this, man. If you stepping up on stage, if you're stepping up, you're willingly stepping into one of the bigger stages because of what that program, what USC represents, has represented historically. Let's say, if it was USC, Notre Dame, he came from Oklahoma. Maybe Oklahoma didn't really care because you were the big dog on the block. If you're at Alabama, LSU, I mean, there are certain programs where you got to stand, you got to take those shots, you got to take those arrows after the game because that's what you signed up for.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big boy sport, man. I've been there for tough losses. I've been there, I'm never one of those guys that the media came to seek out to ask the big question, but I've been next to guys in front of lockers when guys are surrounded and they'll ask the tough questions and stuff like that. You got to be, I mean, if you're going to accept the millions, you got to accept the responsibility of everything that else comes along with it. My man Spider-Man's uncle said, with great power becomes great responsibility.
Yes, sir.
I would throw a caveat in there, with great money and power comes great responsibility. And that means taking on all roles of the position. One of them is when you do well, they want you to stand in front of the camera and talk. When you do bad, we're going to ask you questions that are going to be tough as well. And when you cry on the sideline, man, that's a whole new ballpark right there.
Because if you're not talking, then the first time that the media has access to you, let's talk about what happened. I don't want to talk about that. They're going to if they're worth their salt, they're going to continue to ask those questions. It's going to be interesting, man, because yeah, it's again, nothing wrong with having emotion, but the going to your mama and crying on the side, that jumped the shark. That was too much. That's beyond the pale in my opinion.